Hey friend, welcome. It's Michaela, but you can call me Mac. Today we're going to be updating the reading journal with all of September's books, and we are starting out with a banger. Wash Day Diaries has to be the best graphic novel I've ever read. It is so good. It's a collection of 5 different short story comics, and it follows 4 friends, Kim, Tanisha, Davine, and Cookie. As the title implies, these stories revolve around wash day or just like hair care routines that many Black women experience everywhere. On top of just a great story, the graphics in this book, the art is just amazing. And as you probably can tell, each woman has like their own kind of like color palette. And I really wanted to play that up in the journal entry that I have here. So I mixed up some paints to represent each of the women. And I'm also just going to use pictures from the story because again, the art was just, it was everything. And of course, the story was really good too. For one, I loved seeing the representation. The way that Kim did her hair was pretty much spot on to how I do my hair. And the way the author and illustrator used hair routines to kind of give us a peek into each character's lives, but also like the friendship and the bond between them. I loved every second of this. I have to say, Tanisha's story was probably my favorite. I was dying laughing. Like I was laughing so hard by the events that were going on in her story, and the story was all told through like a group chat. And so I felt like I was reading my friend's text messages of a story that she was telling, and I was just like, girl, oh my goodness. This book, I just loved it. I will say the only criticism that I do have is that I just wanted more. I wanted more of every single one of these stories. I didn't realize these were short stories when I went into this. And so there were, I want to say 4 out of the 5 short stories ended on a cliffhanger. So some of the stories weren't really wrapped up. And I was just a little confused because I was like, well, what happened? So I just want more. I want more of all of it, all of them. I do also appreciate how this story talked about some heavy topics and some important topics. And I don't know. I went into this not really even knowing what I was getting myself into, and I was just pleasantly surprised. I loved it. Definitely gonna be in the tops for the year. I also read Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is a memoir about her growing up Korean American, losing her mother, and kind of forging her own identity. So she talks about growing up as one of the few Asian American kids in her school in like a small town in Oregon. And she talks about kind of like, you know, the struggles of like adolescence and teenage angst with her mom in particular. She also talks about the good times that she had with her mom and them bonding over Korean food. As she grew up, she moved to the East Coast to attend college, and she started to realize that her Korean roots were kind of getting more and more distant from her. When Michelle was 25, her mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, so she ended up moving back home to help her dad take care of her mom in her like final months. And it wasn't until then that she realized that she didn't really know how to make any of the Korean foods that her mom would make for her when she was sick. She didn't know how to speak Korean, so it was at this moment that she tried to start getting more in touch with the language and the food and the history. My supervisor let me borrow her copy of this book a couple of months ago, so I really need to read it so I can give it back to her. And I've recently been going into a lot of books without reading the description of them. I knew that this was pretty popular. It was a highly praised memoir, and to be honest, I wasn't super familiar with who Michelle was. So even after reading the book, I actually went on YouTube and listened to a couple of her songs, and they were pretty good. I will admit I did not give this book a rating because I did not feel comfortable rating this book. There was something that was just deeply personal. It read as if this was like a journal maybe, or like a diary, and it was, you know, kind of published for others to read. So I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable rating this. Even if I gave it a 5-star or a 4-star, I don't know. There was something that just didn't sit right with me to rate this. So therefore, I also just don't really have many thoughts about this. So I don't have anything to write on my journal page, but I did find this beautiful artwork a couple of months ago. And I just kept thinking about this artwork when I was reading this book. So I was like, this would be perfect. So I was super inspired to create this visual piece here. It was a lot of fun playing with mixed media and using thread as the tears/noodles in the bowl. But that thread was not trying trying to stay glued down, I had to add this like extra piece of like black paper, and I mean, it made her eye makeup just a little thick, but I think it turned out pretty good. To be honest, I think it speaks volumes when a book brings out more of like my creative side or the artistic side versus the words that I want to say to convey how I felt about it. I think this might be one of my favorite journal pages I've ever made. I also read the third book in the Mead Mishap series, That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human, and first of all, let me just say, I am absolutely eating these books up, and this book was no different. I loved it. It was adventurous, it was funny, it was lighthearted, the smut was great, the banter between the main characters was great. I love this series. Because this is the third book, I won't talk too much about the story, although these can kind of be like interconnected standalones because each couple has their own book, has their own story. Of course, some characters from the other books will appear in these books, but for that reason, I am going to be referring to the female main character as the princess. So this story follows Dante, who is a dragon shifter, and he ends up saving this princess who is trapped in this tower. The tower that I am creating on my journal page, I wanted to continue to play around with like some mixed media, so I'm just using some paper to create the little bricks of the tower, and then I'm going to use some tissue paper and glue that on top to give it some texture, and then I'm going to paint everything gray, and then lastly, I'm going to finish this up with some moss, and I feel like I probably could have used a little bit more moss, but if you've ever worked with this, it is so messy, and so I was like, no, we're gonna limit it to this. Also, can we just take a second to just admire the new covers that are coming out? I mean, the other two covers were gorgeous, but this one I think has to be my favorite. I mean, first of all, look at Dante. I'm not gonna say too much. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't want to expose myself. But these colors, like everything is just popping. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I ended up giving this 4.75 stars because there was something that I was just like waiting for to happen in the book. I did listen to the audiobook version of this, and I was just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it finally happened in the last 2 minutes of the book, and it was in the epilogue nonetheless. And I was just like, oh, I wanted more of this. I wanted to see where else this was gonna go. So that's the only reason why I couldn't really give it 5 stars. But if you're looking for a funny, smutty romantasy with diverse characters and great banter, I recommend this series. It's so good. And Dante probably gave me one of my favorite quotes ever. I don't know, my husband is probably like, oh my God, I'm so tired of you reading these books. Because I'm just like, how come you've never said this to me? Anyway, so Dante said, but nothing could prepare me for the visceral hatred I felt for the son who dared to set on my days with her. And I just absolutely ate that up. I ate it up. It was so good. Like, this man was willing to fight the sun god because he was just like, I want to spend forever and ever and ever with her, but you keep ending our days. Like, if you don't have that energy with me, I don't need it. You know what I mean? Anyway, next. So a couple of months ago, I created this spread in my journal called Girl Read These Books, and it's just a list of books that I want to read by the end of the year. Well, I put quite a few books on there that had to do with like hotels or were set in hotels, simply because I had a journal idea for them. I wanted to do a 2-page spread of like a watercolor painting of a hotel facade, and then the like pages right behind it would be like the inside of the hotel where I could make doors that kind of correlated with each of the books. Idea 10 out of 10. Execution, however, could use some work. Yeah, I did not really like how this turned out, so let's just focus on the inside of the hotel for now. The first door I'm going to paint is for the book's security. This book takes place in a beachfront hotel called the Manderley Resort. It offers its patrons the ultimate in luxury, so it's a super fancy hotel with a high-tech security system. In this story, we follow Tessa and the employees 24 hours before the hotel is due to open. They're basically just putting the final touches on everything and getting ready for the grand opening. Well, during the prepping, Tess starts to feel like something is not quite right, and she's starting to feel like that they're all being watched, and she's basically just trying to survive through the night. Okay, I'll be honest with you, friend. I have been reading Security for at least like a year, maybe even 2 at this point. I keep picking it up and I keep putting it down. Well, I finally just decided to get the audiobook just so I can finish it. And it's not that long of a book, so it was a pretty quick listen, and it would have been a pretty quick read, but it just kept losing my attention, kind of. The premise and the idea of the story was really, really cool. Like, we're literally watching all of the prep going on and everything, all of the events that are happening in the hotel through the security cameras. So The idea was there, the execution, I just don't know. There was also like this random like love interest that was there, and the backstory for Tessa, like I didn't really care about any of the characters. There's a lot of characters as well. So I don't know. Yeah, I ended up giving this a 2.75. I won't say too much more about it. It's definitely a thriller that I think kind of crosses over a little bit into horror just because there are some gory scenes in it, which I wanted to reflect by painting the door with these like blood splatters. A huge contrast to Security, I gave The Hotel Nantucket 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. Actually, now that I think about it, the stories were kind of similar in the way that they were set up. We're following the hotel manager, Lisbeth Keaton, and similar to Security, this story also has a huge cast of characters, each of them getting their own chapters, and we actually get more information about their lives and their backstories, which I really appreciated. There's also a ghost in here as well, and it's not really what you're thinking. It's not like horror or scary. It's actually kind of funny. Anyway, this story basically follows the staff of the Hotel Nantucket. It was recently bought by this London billionaire, and literally his only goal is to get a 5-key review from like a secret hotel reviewer on Instagram. That's literally his only goal. Like I mentioned, we're getting the staff's backstories. We're just getting their day-to-day working at the hotel. It's actually really interesting because the way that it's told, again, similar to Security, we're literally watching this all go down through a security camera. However, the way that this was told, it felt like you were a resident on the island and you were literally getting like gossip from other people and from the narrator of like what's going on and what's happening in different people's lives. And it was just like, I don't know, it just felt like a neighborly situation. Like I was literally there and like witnessing all these other things going on. The hotel signature color was hydrangea blue, so I wanted to make sure I incorporated blue on the door. And yeah, I would definitely recommend this book, especially as like a summer read or like an end of summer read. Yeah, it was good. I definitely want to try out some more of her books. As soon as fall hit, I ran to the library to pick up some thriller books, and Bring Me Back was one of them. It follows a young couple named Finn and Layla. They're driving home from vacation when Finn pulls over to a service station and he leaves Layla alone in the car. When he gets back to the car, Layla is gone. She is nowhere to be seen. So he's like waiting for her for a bit. Maybe she's in the bathroom. Then he starts searching for her because he starts to worry. He eventually calls the police and he tells them the truth, but he doesn't tell them the whole truth. Well, 12 years later, Finn has moved on with his life and he's actually engaged to Ellen, Layla's sister, which is a situation, but not my place to judge. Anyway, he receives a phone call. Basically, somebody said that they saw Layla. So the story is them trying to figure out, is somebody pretending to be her? Is it actually her? I mean, the police never actually found her body anyway. Did she just disappear? What happened to her? And if I'm being honest, this was a very mid thriller. I've read way more thrilling books, and I don't really want to talk too much about thrillers because I don't want to give away too much, but it was okay. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I messed this page up. I forgot to cut my hole in the paper, so I was struggling. The project went about how the reading journey and experience felt. I also thought about like decorating it with like, drawing some vines on it to make it look a little bit more like the book, but honestly, I just didn't care. I didn't care to put too much more into this. Yeah, that's basically how this one turned out. I also picked up Killers of a Certain Age on my library run, although I don't think I would call this a thriller. It's definitely like adventure. There's some humor in there. I guess it's kind of mysterious. It was described as James Bond meets the Golden Girls. The story follows 4 women in their 60s, Billy, Mary Alice, Helen, and Natalie, and they're literally getting ready to retire from their day jobs of being an assassin. From the last 40 years, they worked for this clandestine international organization, and so to celebrate their retirement, the organization actually sends them on an all-expense paid vacation. While on vacation, they realize that they are now the targets of an assassination order put out by the same organization that they just spent the last 40 years working for. So they basically just have to work together to try to survive this whole ordeal. They literally just want to relax and chill and just retire, but it's kill or be killed. There's really no other option for them. I really like this story. It's more on the cozy side. It's not very thrilling. There is some adventure in there, and of course, the women have been best friends for the last 40 years, so watching their banter and their dynamic, it's pretty funny. The story is told in like the past and the present, so you get like glimpses of how they became assassins and how they joined the organization, and then of course the present day of like how they're dealing with the situation. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think the only thing that I was hung up on was based on the description. I wasn't expecting the setting that happened in the book. I wasn't expecting that to take place the way it did. So that was the only thing. But other than that, I really liked the story. I thought it would be really cute to make the journal page look like a spy dossier. I also read Fourth Wing, which I did an entire video review about. I'll be sure to link that so you can go check it out. And with that, here's a final flip through of all the 8 books I read in September. As always, thanks so much for watching, friend. I really appreciate it. Check out the Fourth Wing video right here on the left-hand side of the screen, and I will see you over there. Bye!